All right, so this is part three. So in part three, we're talking about volume, right? So what is volume? Volume is the amount of space that something takes up. So for example, if I have a golf ball, it takes up a certain amount of space. If I have a basketball, it takes up more space. So I would say the basketball has more volume compared to the golf ball, okay? So now, how can we measure the volume of an object? Well, it depends what it is, okay? So there's two main ways that we can measure the volume of an object, all right? So for example, one way is to use mathematical formulas. So if the object that we're measuring fits into one of these categories, then we have specific formulas that we can use. If the object is a cube, I can use this formula, a to the third power. So in a cube, every single side is the same length. So I just take one of those sides and I multiply it by itself 3 times, right? So this side is 2. I multiply 2 times 2 times 2, or 2 to the third power, as it says here, okay? If I have a rectangular prism, I multiply the length times the width times the height, all right? And that gives me the volume here. If I have a sphere, and we used this before when it comes to planets, okay? So remember in the packet when we were finding the volume of the various planets and stars? So we use this formula. We find the radius. So look at the radius from the very center all the way to the edge. That's called the radius. So we take the radius and we cube it. Again, radius times radius times radius, multiply times pi, right, which is 3.14, and then multiply times the fraction 4 over 3, right? As it says here, 4/3 times pi times the radius cubed. So this makes it easy. If we have a formula, then we can use that, okay? So you guys will be doing this problem over here on the right, okay? Find the volume of a locker, okay? But over here in your book, it gives us an example, right? So for example, let's suppose I have this rectangular prism and I know the length is 25 centimeters, right? So the length is usually the longest portion, so 25, times the width, it says here 18, right? Times the height, which is 10. So all I do is I just multiply them together, 25 times 18 times 10, and I get my answer. So it's as simple as that. Now, let's suppose we have an object that is not a cube, that is not a rectangular prism, that is not a sphere, right? So it is just some, strange shaped object, okay? So what do we do then, right? What do we do if we have some strange shaped object? Well, another method is to use what is called water displacement. So we use this in the class also when we were figuring out the volume of different kinds of rocks, okay? So a rock is usually not like a perfect like cube or a perfect sphere. It is some weird shaped object. So let's take a look at this over here. We have this screw over here, this bolt over here. So it does not, meet any of the criteria of being a sphere or a cube or anything like that. So what do? We take a graduated cylinder and we fill it up to whatever amount we want. So these guys, they filled it up to about 150 milliliters. Okay. Then you take this object and you put it inside of the graduated cylinder. So what should you notice? You should notice that the level of the water rises, right? So what do? You find the new measurement of the water, okay? And so it is, like 175 or whatever it is. You find the new measurement of the water and you subtract it from the original. So now when I put the bolt in there, it's like, let's say it's 180. It looks like about 180, something like that. So it's about 180. I subtract the original, 150. So 180 minus 150, and I get 30. So the volume of this bolt is 30 milliliters. Okay? And same thing over here. Here's another example. All right, so we filled it up, okay, to about 4.8. So notice over here in this graduated cylinder, the water line is a little bit curved. Okay, you notice it sinks down here at the bottom, and it curves up at the edges. So what is the original volume? You do not read it at the edges. You read it at this lowest point right over here. So over here, it's at about 4.8. All right. So you put this object in, this T-Rex, you put it in, and then the water should rise. So you take the new water level, subtract it from the old one, and that gives you the volume of this Tyrannosaurus Rex.